Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, a podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. Before we get started, this is the trigger warning. We're going to be talking about horror culture and horror things, which could involve sensitive subjects, anything from offensive language, topics such as child abuse, murder, rape. There will be F-bombs. I already said that. But that is the trigger warning. So that's the kind of stuff that we talk about here. But it is also a fun and interesting and intellectual show. So if that's your kind of thing, strap in. It's going to be fun. If not, maybe give it a thought. Take a walk about, come back, and listen to us talk about fucked up shit.
Like that.
We will be talking to authors Cody Goodfellow and Tyler Dupay, as well as director John Fallon, actress Rebecca Kennedy, and this guy named Rodrigo Godinho, who's just the CEO of Rue Morgue. It's no big deal. That's in the near future. Today, we have the pleasure of the company of Dan Chase, founder of the Cut to the Chase podcast. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Hello.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah.
Our pleasure. Don't know how much Lacey told you, but basically the theme of the interview is we ask questions about your childhood, teenage years, and adulthood, trying to understand what it is about horror that you love, sort of a pseudo-psychological profile thing. And then at the end, we'll, wrap up with a summary and see how close we get and just see what comes up, basically.
Well, first of all, Lacey told me a little bit, but honestly, I listened to a lot of your episodes. This is a fantastic podcast, I just want to say. And
Thank you.
The people that you get on, like they're obviously, you got some big people, some big names or whatever, but what you two bring to the show is fantastic. I love the questions. I love every bit of it.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. Well, thank you. And good to know that you know what you're getting into.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm ready to rock.
All right. Well, let's go. Starting with your childhood, what are some of your earliest memories of scary things?
Scary things in my early childhood. I mean, it sounds pretty typical, I guess, but shit under your bed, dark spaces, stuff like that, running to the bathroom in the middle of the night, to go pee or whatever.
I still do it down a dark hallway. It's like you reach about the 2/3 mark of the dark hallway and you can't help it. Your pace just starts to quicken like,
Exactly. Stuff like that. So, I guess it was pretty typical. Nothing too crazy though. Nothing like traumatizing as a child that carried over into adulthood or anything like that, but pretty atypical stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Not uncommon.
Right.
No particular media though that you remember, or stories, books?
I can't pinpoint anything except this is the first time I can, so this is what I usually go with. It was A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4 behind the scenes VHS tape. And yeah, exactly. So, learning how all this stuff was made, and I always knew it's fake or whatever, but to actually see, the animatronic spider and however they did stuff, that was even more intriguing as a horror fan to see how all this stuff is done. And then you kind of backtrack and watch some of the Elm Street movies, and that's kind of where it all began for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
But obviously you were already interested in that stuff before she got that for you, I guess, because that's how she knew to get it for you.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I never shied away from it. I always thought it was intriguing and while scary, yes. I've always found horror extremely cathartic, and real life horrifies me more than anything. Movies ain't shit. Movies the fucking soft spot. Movies just make you there, so and I've had some horrible traumatizing events that have happened in my life that any movie, I don't care what movie you bring me, nothing can get to you even as close as some of those things,
Well, let's talk about that in a minute. First, let me ask this behind the scenes tape. About how old were you when she gave that to you?
So I had to have been 5 or 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So even pre-K.
Yeah.
Yep.
I gotta say, that is pretty cool that you saw the behind the scenes stuff first. That almost like instantly
you didn't say that he saw that. You didn't say that he saw that first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He just said that he saw that early on. It's the first thing he remembers.
And you got to remember,
well, yeah, true.
I'm 37 years old, so it's, about, the 1990 area, something like that. And for me, just having access to a couple channels, like how many channels did we even have back in the day? I don't even know. Like there was a couple. So the chance of me seeing something as compared to like now where you get all these streaming services, you could literally just click on anything, anytime. I think it was pretty subdued compared to what it is now. But anytime that I would see something, I was very, very intrigued by it. A lot of the stuff that I used to be into though, while not horror movies or whatever, I did find very dark and scary, I guess, and intriguing. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but there's a scene in the 1990 movie Ninja Turtles, and starring Corey Feldman, and little things like when Raphael comes out for the first time after he gets his sai back, and he pulls it into the around the corner and jumps out. I mean, that to me is it's dark imagery, and I don't think that's the darkest movie or anything, but just things like that always intrigued me. And obviously, as a kid, I started off with like Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles and things of that extent. And it's kind of weird, but the transition into the horror stuff, it was almost seamless. It wasn't necessary because I think of, a Shredder the same as like a Jason Voorhees. Like, what's the difference? They're all guys, Uncle Phil in a mask, but like they're all the same. They're all the same type of scary imagery type of people. So for me, there's no defining like this was a horror movie that started it for me or whatever. I have horror movies that have definitely come later that are staples in my life, but that early area in my life is a little fuzzy, is exactly where it began, but I do remember the transition being pretty seamless.
Okay. Two things. One, awesome reference with Uncle Phil for the voice of the cartoon Shredder, as a nice little deep cut there. And I think you might be onto something there. It's interesting. Like, do we somehow have a subconscious introduction to things horror with other media? Because like the lighting, the tone, the atmosphere, the soundtrack, other movies that are kids movies like Ninja Turtles, you have certain scenes where there's just an eerie tone to it, maybe because they're bringing in the villain or this is a tense scene and it's not even a horror yet, but you're introduced to that dingy, low lit alleyway scene that just kind of gives you that horror or creepy vibe.
Absolutely.
Well, it's the evil part of it, and then the horror is just off screen.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Even like look at one of my favorite movies growing up was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Fucking Large Marge, man. Like that was scary. Like you look at it now and it's hilarious, but there's even like, dude, there's scenes in some movies where it's just like, oh my God, that's scary, but at the same time, equally intriguing, if not more. I'm like, okay, yeah, like get sucked into the darkness, so to speak. I've never been put off by it. If I've ever been truly scared, but I may have to like step back a minute. But I know that when I go back in, I'm coming in even harder because I want to explore those things that really truly fucking scare me.
Yep.
Yeah, Pee-wee's. Two things that everybody remembers from that are Large Marge, and then maybe they might remember the tequila song.
Yes,
or the bike.
I remember the Rube Goldberg machine. That was pretty cool.
I don't remember that.
You remember how he'd make his breakfast in the morning with the Rube Goldberg shit, and it would like push this thing and that thing.
Yes, yeah. Now that you mention that, I remember now. But had you asked me, I wouldn't have. I couldn't have placed that.
I want that bike.
The Schwinn.
My bike!
Did you have any friends or family when you were a kid who were fans of horror?
Yeah, I did, man. So I moved to the place where I lived, the most part of my life. I moved there around the same time. I want to say, 6, 7, 8 years old, around that area. I moved to Cape Cod. And moving to Cape Cod was big because if anybody knows, Jaws was filmed on
That's
Martha's
the first thing
Vineyard.
that came to my mind.
Yep.
Yep.
Right. So as soon as you enter that territory, it becomes like a rite of passage that if you live there, you have to know fucking everything about Jaws, and you have to know that movie and stuff like that. So, I made a lot of friends. One of my first friends, I mean, was it straight up horror? No, but I remember I'm still friends with him to this day. He's in all the same groups as I am still. One of my boys, Russ Horn, he got me into, it was a lot of the action stuff, but like Predator, stuff like that. Like really just kind of these iconic figures that you could include as like horror type figures. So that was cool, meeting people that were into it as well. I was like, oh, this is like a thing, you know? And I remember I just mentioned him actually. It was weird the other day on another show. I met, because we just watched Evil Dead 2, and I met my friend Hans, and you know, I'm a complete newbie. Like I would wear like, you know, in 6th, 7th grade, like Korn t-shirts and stuff like that. I was never like a horror t-shirt because it just wasn't my thing yet. And he would come in and be like, dude, you gotta watch Evil Dead. He was like obsessed with it. So I went and watched that because of him. I was fucking blown away by just what the hell that even was, you know? And it was just super intriguing to me. What else, man? I had a lot of friends into a lot of different cool shit. And I remember when I moved, it was kind of, you know, a whole new set of people telling me to you know, get into this, that, the other thing. And I remember watching all the Friday the 13th movies from the first one, just obviously renting them from Blockbuster with my friend James, and just doing overnight sleepovers. And we would binge watch these suckers over and over again. And again, they were never really that scary to me. It was just more fun. Like, yeah, there were moments, but like I never actually felt like, you know, whatever, something was going to get me until I would play games with myself and allow myself to think that way. You know how you can fuck. I can still do it today. I can fuck with myself and think somebody's out in my kitchen and completely freak myself out if I want to. You know, and I like to do that sometimes. I'm not going to lie. I don't know why. I don't know what there is to say about that, but maybe I'm just testing myself. Who the fuck knows?
Did you participate in Halloween as a kid?
Loved Halloween. Absolutely loved it. I'm friends with the dudes that I went trick or treating with as a kid.
Still, nice.
To this day, love them. Like those are my boys. So many fond memories. Halloween to me was always very sacred, more sacred than Christmas ever was. It's just, I don't know, like we celebrate horror movies all year long to a certain extent, but then you really have a reason to do it, accompanied with all the fun activities. It seems like as the years go on too, more and more people are just like, Halloween's my fucking favorite. I'm like, yeah, fucking high five. There's just something magical about it. And obviously it's got that darker side to it. So it's like more badass than fucking Christmas could ever be, even with Krampus.
So much more badass.
Right. It's just.
Did you have
yeah.
Did you have a favorite costume when you were a kid?
My favorite costume ever was a fucking a Rambo mask, a Sylvester Stallone mask. It had the curly hair, it had the bandana. It was it legit looked like Stallone. Like I loved it. I would wear that thing all the fucking time. But then yes,
why was that one your favorite?
It looked exactly like him. I don't know. It was easy to put on. It had obviously that nasty ass latex fucking smell on the inside and stuff like that. But I equate that smell to this day to good memories because it just takes me right back. You know, it just brings me right back to those times. And it wasn't anything because like I was a big fucking Rambo fan or anything. I love that fucking Stallone mask, you know?
So when you say latex, I'm actually thinking, okay, so maybe this is a different kind than I had pictured. I was thinking like the hard plastic, but
no.
If you're talking latex, that's like the pullover.
Yes. Yeah. And that's probably why too, because I hate those uncomfortable masks. Like who the fuck wants to wear that? Like, so yeah, that one was sweaty as hell. But I remember that it lasted a long time too. Like that sucker was around in my attic for years, and I think it got like melted or something up in the attic, whatever. Because by the end, it looked like fucking Stallone at the end of Rocky 3. Just all beat up. And, you know.
Still looked like him, just different movie.
Right,
just different
exactly. Yep.
Did you have a least favorite costume?
Least favorite costume. I remember my mom tried to pull some shit and be like, let's make your fucking costume. Those type of years. Hated those years. I'm like, this is an embarrassment to obviously this holiday, but to me as well. Yeah, something about, I remember I wore some fucking janky ass like towel as a cape. And I just remember being really pissed. Like really pissed about it. I don't like to cheap out on Halloween shit. I mean, you know, we may go to the dollar store and get all these cheap decorations and stuff. That's fun in itself. But when it comes to costumes, like you gotta go all in. You gotta get the official. Give me the most official Spider-Man costume you can fucking find. You know, I was big into Batman. I had a couple Batman ones that I loved, but I remember one got destroyed, so I couldn't ever wear that. I had Superman pajamas that I know this isn't not really the question again. I'm going to my favorites, but I had Superman pajamas that had a fucking cape on it that I wore for Halloween.
Oh, I did too. Did they have? Were they the feeding pajamas?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Halloween's just so much fun, man. And obviously, like, the candy's great or whatever. But for me, it was just always very sacred. Like, even to this day, you know, taking off work the day after, making sure that you got a good chunk of time off and you can do all the things you want to do, watch all the movies you want to do. It's like a ritual. It's so sacred.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I still take the day off as if it were, you know, like any other holiday, like Christmas or Thanksgiving. Like, no, this is an official holiday. I'm not going to work today. Fuck you.
Right. Yes. The day after, too. Fuck November 1st. Worst day
So I'm seeing one possible thing here. So Rambo, Batman, Superman. Do you have a thing for like heroes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Superheroes and villains?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm big into all that stuff. I see everything that comes out as far as well, all of that. Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
Any scary dreams when you were a kid?
Yeah, it was always Freddy dreams, and I still have them to this day. It's never been my thing. Yeah, like I don't know what it is. And hearing Wes Craven's story about how that whole thing started, I think that story scares me more than the actual character.
Yeah, the inspiration for Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes, about the dude just like staring at the kid up in the window. Oh man, like
creepy shit.
Nothing scares me more than like crackheads like that. Like crackheads are scary because they have nothing to lose, and like obviously when you're on crack or on meth or whatever the hell they're on, like they're dialed into to that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Very intense.
Yes, like exactly right. That shit scares me.
Mm-hmm.
People on drugs with absolutely, you know, nothing that's going to stop them from doing sketchy shit. So I removed myself very quickly, as I did all my other friends. And I'm like, yo, we're staying away from these people because that's what truly fucking scares me. It's because these people have nothing to lose.
Let's come back to the Freddy nightmares for a minute here. You were talking about that, and obviously I understand the real life reason leading into that, but like what are some of the other reoccurring parts of the nightmares?
Oh man, I used to have dreams that I'd be back on my childhood street, but it was Elm Street instead. Like legit Elm Street. I remember I lived on a short little road, and at the end was a cemetery. If you saw it to this day, you'd be like, oh my God, this is straight out of a horror movie, you know? And literally that's where I was projected all the time. And Freddy just always be lurking. It was never him right in my face. It was always like the Freddy fucking silhouette and just stuff like that, and his voice. And it was always something around the corner that I couldn't see or something you could feel. You know how in dreams you could just like feel things, you know, and he was always around because let's face it, in the dream world, in those movies, Freddy's everywhere. He can do whatever the hell he wants. So I think that translates more than anything. In the movies, you see a lot of the cool deaths and stuff like that. But to me, the scary part is like, you're in his world. he knows exactly where you are in that boiler room, and he's trying to fuck with you purposefully. Like, he's trying to scare you.
Wanted to complete 180 here for a second, ask a different question. Was there a time in your childhood when you felt completely calm?
In terms of what? In terms of like watching scary stuff or being around like
No, in general, like just a moment where you felt really safe or happy.
I think generally I feel safe, but I can't necessarily pinpoint a moment. I think
That's fine.
Later on in life, when I think I've gained a lot of perspective on life, I take measures to make myself safer, and that kind of helps. But no, I felt pretty safe as a kid, I would say.
Let me rephrase the question.
Yes.
Instead of saying feeling safe, feeling at peace.
I think I have like two sides to myself. I'm one of those like 0 to 100 type of people.
Can't
I was
relate.
getting that impression.
Yep.
Yeah. No, well, and I think no, I'm pretty calm. Like I'm pretty mellow. I like to read the room a lot. I'm always seeing what's happening around me. And if I do start to feel unsafe or whatever, I just remove myself from it. But no, I think generally speaking, I'm pretty calm until I'm fucking not. I'm just kidding.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that has come up in past calls, but sounds like it has not come up for you, is it doesn't sound. You pretty much said there's no dividing line for you where it was scary up until a certain moment, and then, scary until a certain moment, and then pleasure after that. It seems like it was always pleasure. There was no earlier moment that you can think of when you were actually afraid of anything in terms of horror.
Yeah.
You mentioned Shredder, Power Rangers. You didn't really specify, but I was kind of thinking with Power Rangers, maybe you're referring to like all the evil monsters that were, that they were always fighting against.
Yes, indeed. Some of them were pretty creepy as a kid. Yeah, for sure.
That's kind of where I was leaning when I mentioned the Rambo mask and Batman and Superman. It sounded like I was getting the concept of, good versus evil, hero versus bad guy. And that when you laughed about, 0 to 100, it's kind of like black or white. It's either this or that.
Right.
All right. Let's jump into teenage years. And some people, they've stayed with horror through their teens into their adult years. Some people in their middle school and high school years, they kind of veer away from it into other things and then come back in their adulthood. Mm-hmm. What was it for you? Did you stay with it or did you go away from it and come back?
Definitely stayed with it for sure. I mean, if you look at that time period when I was watching it, you got a lot of these franchises that have been kind of burned into the ground. So at that point, I was learning like actually what a good movie is, as opposed to, like Halloween 5, which is not a good movie, and things like that. So I could start to tell those apart, but I never got away from it. I was just kind of like, that one sucked. I'm a little turned off by that, but I'll still give it another chance. And again, all these.
If you were to pick if you were to pick your top 3 of your teens, then what would be like the ones that stand out to you the most?
Movie wise?
Yeah.
Oh man. For my teenage years.
Usually the first ones that come to mind for a reason.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of my third one. I have my first 2. Because this is where everything started to change for me, and the ball really started rolling. Much like Lacey Lou, in 1996, I was introduced to Scream. Now, not necessarily teenage years. I think I was like 11 or 12. I saw it in the theater.
It's close enough.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I equate all those. It was a crazy ass time for me.
I mean, the Scream series went on into your teenage years, so I think that's.
Yes.
Hang on. So you said you had the first 2. Is Scream one of your first 2, or
Scream is my?
What were the first 2?
Yep, number 1 and Scream 2, because I just talked about this the other day as well. Scream 2, people forget, like Scream was re-released in theaters, and Scream 2 had been made under a year. They flew with that shit. They had that movie out quick.
Okay.
Man, my third one. Shit. I think
What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Friday the 13th Part 4, because I realized that was actually not only like, a Jason movie too, but an actually like a good movie. And I was like, oh, wait, like I can have both, because you talk about veering away from it, and, that Tarantino and people like that haven't necessarily came into my life at that point. But again, I am seeing films that are very well made. And to me, that's extremely intriguing, on top of the horror stuff. I'm like, wait, you can have both? But I never got away from it. No, it was the opposite. Once my teenage years hit, once Scream hit my life, it changed everything for me. Like, you want to talk about, that was probably one of the first movies that like truly scared the shit out of me.
What scared you about it?
The opener was just, it's a very real thing. It's not a Jason Voorhees where he comes back to life with a fucking lightning bolt. It's just literally somebody who throws on a mask and just terrorizes. And again, with the whole meta thing of them playing off of scary movies too, I'm like, well, wait, I know that. Oh my God, this is like a movie for me. And I was
right. Like, I identify with this person that's about to be murdered.
Right. Exactly. And I'm like, this is fucking great. Like, this is so cool. And it also started my love of mysteries, of whodunit slashers. People often don't talk about that aspect when you talk about slashers, because it's just people dying. But it's also a ton of fucking fun trying to figure out what's happening and who is the killer and why. What's the motive, And I really dug that. So, no, I never got away from it in my teenage years. The teenage years are when I hit the NOS button and really went full throttle on that shit.
So what did you like about Scream 2 specifically, as opposed to Scream 1?
Oh man, how much fucking time you got, man? So the opener, I think, is the greatest opener in horror film. I think one of.
What did you love about it?
The fact that they start off without the main characters from the first movie, and they're playing on that, like directed by Robert Rodriguez. I didn't know who that was at the time, but like you're seeing the events of the first movie happen on screen. Just taking all that in itself was mind-blowing. I'm like, wait, so they made the movie and these people are now watching the movie, and now this guy, and then there's, and by the way, who wouldn't want to go to that fucking screening of Stab? That was the most lit fucking theater ever. Like,
right? Like all the masks and everything everywhere. Like, who even does anything like a production like that anymore?
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Like, and that's the world I want to live in, and it looked like so much fun. And then obviously to see the characters, fall to the hands of Ghostface again. And, it was so perfect and truly like scary at some parts when Omar Epps jumps out of the closet when she's on the way back into the theater and he's like, I gotta go take a piss or whatever. And he dies. Like, it's amazing. Like, I love that opening sequence. Then jump to the Randy kill. Nobody saw fucking Randy getting killed in the middle of the daylight, talking shit and just gets grabbed in the van. Shocking fucking kill. It felt dangerous. Then flash forward to the next scene where it's one of the greatest chase scenes, I think, in horror movie history as well, where he's chasing fucking Gale and you think Dewey gets it too. And now you're like, man, Wes Craven just pouring it on right now. He's going to kill everybody in this fucking movie. There's the car scene where they crash the car and Ghostface is in the fucking driver's seat and they got to climb over him. What?
Okay, stop.
Yes.
Hang on, I want to stop you. So, like, you're spitting out scenes, but you're not talking about the emotions. Like, exciting. But why is it exciting? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the gut part of it?
It's exciting because it's awesome, because that's the shit that I want to see, because that is scary to me. That's fun. That's what I want to see in a horror movie, right? That's what living is to me. It's just being excited about these things that obviously, like Kevin Williamson, one of the greatest writers, those are all scenes, yes, but all those scenes make up for just a fun movie. Like, I dissect those scenes, but these are all the scenes that make up the movie. I didn't even fucking mention the Buffy scene, which Buffy was huge at that time. You can take that scene out of that movie and put that in any fucking slasher movie, and it'll play fucking fantastic. I think it felt like home. It felt like home, and it still does to this day. We throw on Scream here. Exact same feeling washes over me as it did the first day. I can remember sitting in that theater, and I remember feeling everything that I can still feel to this day. That is not an easily accessible emotion for me normally. But with that in particular, direct mainline. And again, it's to play off the name of your show, it makes me happy. It just makes me happy. I feel at home. I feel like this. I was put on this fucking earth to love movies like this, and I will. And hey, sign me up, coach. Put me in.
What about Friday the 13th Part 4? What did you like about that one?
Friday 4 was just, again, it was a great culmination of what I believe to be a well-made movie. Mixed with an iconic character that I had, because it's just fantastic. I think Crispin Glover and that whole group of teens, it's just so much fun. Like, I always wanted to go to a lake house with my friends and party. It's just, I always felt like these movies, they just have like the greatest setups, like camp counselors. Like, that's just such a great set. I went to camp as a kid. Like, I would love, like, it's such a fun way to play on those things. And Friday the 13th Part 4, it's just fucking fantastic. I mean, you look at his face even after that, and what Savini did with his face, man, it's just so iconic. It was also great seeing it through, like, I can only articulate this now. I couldn't say this back then, but as a kid watching these movies, it was the first time that they really introduced the perspective from a kid in Corey Feldman, right? Mm-hmm. So you're getting to see all this mayhem, and again, he's a horror movie fan. He loves his masks. Mm-hmm. Like, he's one of us. Yes. I love the opening shot of that movie. The opening shot, it starts right where the third one leaves off. To me, as a movie fit, like, this is pre-MCU shit, you know? We don't get mid-credit scenes, and this just left off right at the barn with the fucking axe in Jason's head. Like, let's go. Everything about that movie, I love, dude. I absolutely love it.
All right. I mean, other than just the words fun, exciting, and fantastic, the only things that I could write down and make notes of is, you mentioned the perspective from a kid and the opening scene picking up where the last one left off.
Yeah.
I can understand introducing perspective as a kid. You know, you could relate to that if you were a kid watching it. I can also understand the opening shot picking up where the last one left off, because it's kind of like you said, it's picking up exactly where the last one left off. So you're kind of jumping straight into the action. Is there something else there that I'm missing, or is that accurate?
About what? Like what specifically are you asking? Is it something that scares me? Like, is it what I love about the movie is it's a good movie. I mean, cinematography, everything about it. It's fun. Crispin Glover's dance. I mean, it's just a lot of fun. There's not much that I take from these movies that are truly like traumatizing. Again, that's fucking reserved for real life shit. This is my comfort zone. This is where I go for fun. I throw in Friday the 13th Part 4 all the fucking time. I'll just let it run, dude. Let it run because it brings me joy, you know?
Let's jump down to some of the other questions here. So you kind of mentioned the real life stuff. What real life stuff was going on in your teens that affected you?
Okay, so a lot. So I had one of my buddies who got smacked by a Mack truck on his way walking to my house.
Ooh.
So that started it off nice and ripe. Then I had my best friend was murdered by a pedophile, which turned into this big fucking thing in my town, where it exposed a church for not only molesting kids, but money laundering. And it like, even at work, everybody's like, I love true crime stuff. I hate it. Remember Nancy Grace? Yeah, I was on Nancy Grace. Like, I don't like any of that shit. And that was the first time in my life where, once everything kind of settled down and the trial was underway and that kind of thing, it was the first time that I actually kind of like had to question, or not necessarily watch what I say, but like your love of horror movies kind of comes into question. Like, well, like your best friend was just like, is that like, do you enjoy that? No, you don't understand. Like, and you have to go back and kind of explain to people. And it was a very odd time because it never felt like that was ever going to come into play until it did in the biggest fucking way possible.
Yeah, I can see how that would definitely take the fun out of it. Like, it goes from, here's this cool thing that I like that's a little macabre and dark, but that's why I like it, to, why do you like these things? Because this terrible thing happened to you. And you're like, I don't want to think about that when I think about this. This is the fun thing in my life. This is the horrible thing that happened. And one is serious and one is fun. Please stop trying to combine these things.
Exactly. Absolutely. 100%. And the thing is, with stuff like that, to this day, we were watching the Johnny Depp trial, and even that brought back memories for me, just having to show up, on the witness list every day, showing up to court, and a lot of bad things happened to me because of that. I can pinpoint it to that, that's where I started a fucking gnarly drug habit, and it was just a horrible time in my life that I wanted to escape so badly, and it trickled on for a good part, if not most of my 20s, actually. And it really just had a fucking crazy effect on me. Lots of therapy, lots of that kind of stuff. It was not easy at all. And again, I just go back to the horror stuff because it's almost like that kind of stuff intrudes on your fun space. And it's like, well, wait a minute. But I think being able to tell the difference and knowing the difference between these things is very key. And I do. And that's why I'm good with it to this day, but still don't like anything true crime, anything that reminds me of that time in my life. It's a hard feeling to describe, but it's not a good one. I'll put it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I can appreciate that. And you're right. Being able to tell the difference does make all the difference.
Yeah.
It's the people who can't tell the difference that you got to kind of watch out for.
Right. Absolutely.
So, one of the questions we often ask there is, did it introduce any fears that you hadn't had before? In this case, you mentioned starting a drug habit and, having to deal with that. Also issues potentially with anything related to court dramas, like you mentioned Nancy Grace, not being a fan of that kind of stuff, which is also understandable.
Yes.
I guess good moment here to ask that opposite question again. So in your teen years, then can you think of one particular moment where you felt at peace or calm?
Yeah, after all that stuff, you find out really who's going to be there for you. Especially through all that stuff for me too, going through all that. It's not an easy time in my life. I probably wasn't the easiest person to be around either. The people that have stuck with me, and now, to this day, that I've had a chance to kind of make things right, that stuff doesn't happen overnight either. I'm talking like years and years of, look, that's who I was, this is who I am, and this is where, I plan on going. I think that more than anything is the thing that sticks with me is the people. It's a very odd way to phrase it, but when you do go through things like that together, it does bond people. And those people I can still call to this day. And I just did it like a month ago or so with my buddy James, this dude I grew up with. And he knows exactly what I'm talking about. I don't have to explain like, oh yeah, and what happened with John? He's like, dude, I know. And this is, and we can just articulate so many things that run the span of practically my entire life, to where, how are you going to explain that to somebody if you only have like 20 minutes or you're just having a conversation with them? They have no context of what you've been through and all that kind of stuff. So to have those people, man, I don't know where I'd be without them. Those are the people that helped me up. They got me back on my feet, and I feel like made me the person that I am today. So the comfort feeling comes from people that truly believe in you. It's a tough thing to kind of talk about personally, but when you have people that are truly there for you, they're really, I'm sure there are words for it, but none that I could personally articulate because I'm not smart enough.
I'm glad that you have those people.
Me too, brother. Me too.
I normally don't bring this up during calls. We kind of talk about it sometimes during our promo things that we put out every so often. But, one of the reasons that Chris and I are a good pair for doing this is I had gone through a number of years counseling, and I've got almost 20 years in the 12-step program now. And around my 9th or 10th year, I had written a book putting together a lot of the tools that I had learned from counseling and therapy. And, what you were talking about there a moment ago about how you can have these conversations with people that you can say something in just a couple words that with anybody else, you'd have to have multiple hours of conversations for them to understand.
Yeah.
That was sort of the whole point behind what I put together, which people in recovery talk about the tools of recovery. And often those tools are just phrases. Like it might just be a sentence or even a partial sentence that is like a title of a topic that it could be multiple hours of conversation. But after you've gone to these meetings and you've talked about these things and you've listened to them, after you've done that a couple times, you don't have to have that whole conversation anymore. You just say the phrase and the other person knows immediately what you're trying to say.
Yes.
And I realized that there was no resource that gathered those kinds of things together in one location. And that was my thing. As I said, I looked around and I realized that there wasn't anything that brought those together. And I said, well, shit, we need to do that. So I did. I started writing them down and got to like 80 or 90 of them.
Oh, wow.
And this is really going off on a tangent, but when you're in a program, a lot of people will refuse to read anything unless it's considered what's called quote unquote program approved material, which means, for example, if you're in AA, you'll only read stuff that's approved for people in AA, and people who are in NA will only read stuff that's approved by NA, and people quite often will refuse to read stuff that's from another group because they're like, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to make this decision. Do I hand it over to the program I'm in and let them publish it as their own thing? But I didn't want to do that because I felt like these tools were common to probably all the programs and people just didn't talk about them or realize it. And again, cutting a long story short, but like when you're talking about this, like I know exactly what you're talking about because I've lived that too. There's definitely it's not just handy, although it definitely is also handy to be able to have that kind of shorthand conversation with somebody. Mm-hmm. But like you say, there's also the bonding part of it. When you're able to have this conversation, there's something there that makes it feel, I don't want to say comfortable, but like just knowing that the other person really does understand it. Like it's not just a words, that there's also the understanding that is there. That's definitely very helpful to help people get through the shit that they need to get through, to put it short.
I think context is everything, right? Like I can't compare myself to anybody because they have their own story too, and I don't know, the thing that I found in the whole recovery thing is what may work for one person is not going to work for another person, or it may work, but it may even take like 30 times, these things are so hard to really pinpoint, I mean, I've told I have PTSD from these things, and I've been told this, that, and the other thing. But I also too, I'm a very firm believer in I am me now, and I've been very successful in certain things in my life that I've literally used the drug thing as my fucking fuel. Like I am not that fucking person anymore. Watch me, motherfucker. And it's a very cocky way of thinking, but I don't think it comes off that way because I don't like talk to people that way. This is just me to myself in my head, knowing that I'm better than this, knowing that I've clearly been through the fucking toughest part. This is easy. You went through hell. This should be fucking nothing. And that's how I approach everything. So I just turn it right around and use it as my tackling fuel, as Bobby Boucher said.
or as for the Game of Thrones fans, as Tyrion had put to Jon Snow, once you own what's yours, nobody can use it against you.
Yes, dude. People still try and use this shit against me though. To this day, and my drug problem. I know, like, when I talk about it, right, that gives people an open invitation to then talk about it like it just happened like last year. Like, no, it's been quite a long time, but...
Well, there's also a difference between talking about it and trying to use it as a weapon against you.
Correct. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And
there's helpful discussion, and then there's that.
Right. And I've noticed that that's just one of those things in life that I'm always going to have to deal with. But again, I welcome that shit because, like, you're talking to the one that's 24 years old, man. I talk to me now, and like, I guarantee you'll be like talking to a completely different person. So I love when people underestimate me. That's fantastic because that way, nothing but up.
So, adult years. If you were to pick the top 3 things that stand out to you the most in horror, what would the top 3 things be for your adult years?
In my adult life,
First 3 things at top of the head.
When Hostel came out, that shook me.
Yeah.
Okay. That's probably one of the scariest fucking movies ever because that could truly happen. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, my friend and I went to Europe, and we're like, I mean, in retrospect, it was something like 1,000 or 1,500 kilometers, I'll use their terms, away. But just looking at it on a map, I'm like, dude, we are right next to Bratislava. We are not going here.
Exactly. And it also, being a huge fan of Eli Roth, he's from Massachusetts, and being from Massachusetts too. Yeah, from Newton, Massachusetts. Yeah. Oh, also, I'll even backtrack and say Cabin Fever, because I saw Cabin Fever in a theater by myself, and I find out the making of that movie and how Eli Roth had no money and had to borrow money from his aunt to make the damn movie. And that, for me, was a changing point because I am not a filmmaker. I have so much respect for people that make movies, though, and it truly excites me. Like, I would love to make a movie someday, but just knowing that these people, you talk to Tarantino or Eli Roth, and these people spent years and years on sets just getting coffee, just know how a set's run and stuff like that. And to me, that turned into something very obtainable. For me, it was more of, this is real. Like, this is a realistic thing that is achievable and attainable if you have this, and this. I mean, obviously, it's not that easy, but it provided kind of a step-by-step how-to get into the business and to, go about these things. So that was a big thing for me, Eli Roth films. Okay, so that's 2.
Maybe you cut out, or I skipped it or missed it or something, but what was the second movie that you mentioned?
It was Hostel and then Cabin Fever. That's
right.
Yeah. 2003 and I believe 2000s. I forget when Hostel came out, but I remember that being a huge resurgence for me.
Cool. Let's go back to Cabin Fever for a minute.
Yes.
What did you like about it as a movie?
I remember going to see it, and it was by myself, and everything that was shot, it was like, hey, this is a real movie. It's got Ryder Strong in it. It had kind of a, not a CW feel, but it kind of that where, it's typical kind of setup with the teenagers and whatever. And I didn't know what it was about. It's flesh-eating virus, but we don't know what it is. I just found it very intriguing, but again, didn't necessarily happen during the movie itself. The movie I loved, but I was like, something made me want to look into it more. And then as I looked into it more, loved it even more, rented it as many times as I could. And it opened up a door for me, and that's where I can pinpoint it obviously started when I saw the movie.
Have you seen the reboot? I have not.
No, I have not. I have no desire to watch the reboot.
I've heard good and bad things. Like, it's not, one of those, this ruined my childhood or my original view of this. I don't know. I've heard good and bad things.
Right. Yeah. It's like a shot for shot remake, right? Like, I'm not saying
I think that's the bad thing that I heard was like, it's like, all right, this is exactly the same thing with just different actors. Why?
Yeah, why? I don't understand. It's like the Psycho remake. Like what?
Because Vince Vaughn's awesome.
What would you say is your favorite thing about the movie?
Yeah.
Cabin Fever?
Yeah.
I love the ending. It was it's very reminiscent, obviously, of other horror films. Oh, and by the way, learning, seeing the movie for what it is, and then you really start to watch it. And as I watch it now, you can see all its influences. Like this is the Texas Chainsaw shot. This is the Evil Dead shot. And so that to me is the type of filmmaker that's like attractive to me because it's like I love horror movies. This is going to be my, ode to Raimi and all these other things. And they put it in their own movie and they make it their own. But yeah, that ending is fantastic. The dude and I also love how it does play.
Hang on. So are you saying that you loved it because it was a reference to some other movie?
Oh no, I mean, they've done it in other movies, but when he walks out and he thinks he's escaped it, and then they all just fucking shoot him. It's a fantastic ending. That's his way of avoiding the virus is to go hide out in a cave, and it does work for him for the duration of the movie. But then he comes back and gets lit the fuck up, and it's just fantastic. And they start taking the bodies and putting them in a pile. It's fantastic. I love it.
Okay. I'm trying to think of there's a word for what you described that they do in the ending there, and the word is escaping me. It's not betrayal, but it's something like that. Like,
subverting expectations?
Yeah. He's literally yelling, I fucking did it! I did it!
In a dark way, it's almost reminiscent of the end of Nightmare, or Night of the Living Dead,
Well, that's
what I was thinking too. Yeah,
that was the movie.
Oh, or like I was rewatching Red State the other day, and there's a similar thing with that in the end where the kids are making it out. John Goodman's character is talking about maybe negotiating, but then you got the one soldier who's just been given orders, and he's like, "No, everyone here dies." That's the story. So mid conversation, before you can think about what's going to happen, bam, dead, bam, dead. Well, shit, that was one of the protagonists.
Right.
Okay. I guess the movie's over.
Exactly. And you said 3 examples. I know those are 2 Eli Roth films. There is one more that I feel like this movie is highly underrated, and this was very big for me personally, was Stephen King's Secret Window with Johnny Depp.
Yeah. That was the one with Shooter, right? Where he had the weird hat?
Yes, with fucking yes, absolutely. Not necessarily like a unique premise. It's been done how many times before?
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't.
It had you going. It's not a unique twist or premise, but I still didn't expect it until it happened.
Right. And it's so great what he does. I mean, even with his hat, it's like it kind of is reminiscent to Freddy Krueger in a way at the end. And a little bit. To go back to the OG even. And nobody's ever said this, but maybe they have said it, but I've never actually heard this echoed. But why don't they fucking put Johnny Depp as Freddy Krueger? First of all, he's Mr. Makeup, right? And he could fucking do it. And that obviously brings it back to the OG original movie too. I always thought Johnny Depp would be a fantastic Freddy Krueger.
Now that you say that, I can see that.
Right?
I just made 3 levels of shocked faces as you were describing that. like fucking Vince McMahon over here. Jesus.
With the eyes glowing.
Yes. And also, yes, because it would bring it back to the first one. Holy shit, Johnny Depp is Freddy Krueger. Let's make this happen now.
Yes. I just love that movie, though. It's so much fun. It's
Freddy Scissorhands.
Yes. See? Yeah, he knows how to work the claw. Exactly, dude. But no, that was just a big movie for me. And, I'm not the biggest Stephen King fan out there. Like, I like a lot of the adaptations, but there's a lot that I don't like, and I think he's very wordy. And
yeah.
It takes a while to fucking get there sometimes. But I don't know, that movie for me, it was one of those, I'm very well aware that this has been done before. It's not doing anything new, but I just love this movie. I love just a dude.
Let me stop you, because
Yeah.
When you and Chris were going back and forth, you were using vague references that you both understood, but someone who hasn't seen the movie, I had no fucking clue what you're talking about. So what did you like about the movie to somebody who's never seen the movie before?
Oh, it's a mystery. Obviously, you don't know exactly what's happening. This guy shows up and he says, "You stole my story," and he basically terrorizes him. And he's a writer. He lives alone. He just got a divorce, or he's going through a divorce, I should say.
Oh, wait a minute. I think hang on. I think maybe a previous guest did mention this one. Is he a writer that goes out to some? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
There's
I will explain this in the way that I explain everything else by simile to something else.
Casserole.
Yeah. Right. No, it's you seen The Dark Half?
Yes.
Steve?
Yeah, I think he was asking.
I know he was. But I was like, thank God he knows about The Dark Half.
I'm bad with names. So, like, if I did see it, I probably wouldn't remember that it was called The Dark Half.
It's about an author who had a vestigial twin that was basically an eyeball and a tooth inside of his brain, but the twin was absorbed into him, and the twin was actually the one who was really writing his books the whole time. So it's one of those, you have another, if I may borrow a phrase from Dexter, a dark passenger. But writing in the back of your mind who's actually doing all the work, and then he comes to the forefront saying, I've been carrying you this whole time, bitch.
So Malignant without all the violence.
Yes, Malignant with believable action.
Yeah, okay. All right, so you like the mystery of it. What else did you like about it?
Oh, Johnny, it's the Johnny Depp show, man. Everybody talks about how he's the Mad Hatter, how he's Mr. fucking Tim Burton, weird makeup dude. This is Johnny Depp, and he's just straight acting the whole movie right in the camera. And then once the end hits, I don't want to give anything away, but it's just full on like, oh shit, okay. And his performance in it, as well as John Turturro's. I mean, Turturro's fantastic in this movie. Truly creepy. I love just everything about it. The cabin in the woods setting, right? And just the claustrophobic kind of atmosphere that it gives. And so I would recommend everybody, if you haven't seen Secret Window, go see it, because a lot of people are just mad on it, but it's one of my favorite movies. I think it's brilliantly done.
So the first thing that you said about it was the ending, about it being, as you said, full on, oh shit.
Yep.
I'm starting to see a pattern, because what I said a minute ago about cabin fever, there was a word for what I was looking for, but I couldn't find it. It was like we mentioned earlier, going from 0 to 100. That was going from 100 to 0. And that, and then this full on, oh shit, we had earlier conversation in this call about basically what I would say is going to extremes. It's all or nothing,
shock and awe.
Yeah. Like, I'm wondering if that's a theme.
Well, yeah, the quote in the movie is one of the famous quotes.
I mean, the theme for you, not just the movie.
Yo, 100%, but it's all about the ending. It's all about the ending. You got to stick the landing.
Or if I may, it's all about that we have just lost cabin pressure moment.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Yeah, no, I just, I'm very passionate about things. Like, I don't feel like there's too much that like people shouldn't address or talk about. I don't know. I just feel like things matter in life. And I know a lot of people probably feel different, like in terms of, oh, my personal preference for this movie or that movie. But I think you're right. A common thing with me is just like, I like to go full on, just give me everything you got, because why the fuck not? We're all going to fucking die eventually. Like, there's no reason why you shouldn't give it everything you got, because in retrospect, you look back at that, and that's where my sense of pride comes from. I've gotten involved with friends and done things in my life, created businesses and put on music festivals and done so much fun shit. Man, I was fucking followed around by a camera crew for a reality TV show that wasn't made one time for the Discovery Channel. None of that would have happened if I didn't do a podcast before that. That's how I met the dude fucking that I was in the back of a truck shoveling with. He's like, you do a podcast? You listen to it? He's like, yep, let's do this. Had the fucking camera. So many things happen that you can't anticipate. Like, there's no reason why me doing a horror podcast could translate to that, but it did. So give it your all, give everything that you fucking got in life. And you may not see that it comes from this angle, but all the good things in my life have led to other good things. And it's just been stepping stones for me. So again, yeah, like I'm kind of a full throttle type of person. I don't see any reason at giving fucking 70% on everything. What's the fucking point? Why are you even here? Like, give me your all.
Because half-ass is easier and not as hard.
And those are the people that don't make a fucking difference ever. Those are the ones that just live by the wayside and they watch fucking, other people do their shit and they're just like, like I want to do that. Yeah, well, fucking work for it. Be a Tom Savini. Show up at 6 a.m. every day, bitch.
Speaking on behalf of those other people, I grew up, I won't say full throttle, but as, teacher's pet and always getting 100, 110 on every test type of thing. And as someone who was raised by someone who was very driven and always a worrywart and, never good enough, I struggled with a lot and still sometimes do struggle with a lot of anxiety. And for me, part of what I needed to do as an adult is to back off of that some and realize that I want to be careful how I say this, but for me, I felt I needed to back off of it a little bit.
No, I think I see where you're coming from. If you give everything 110%, you're eventually going to exhaust yourself and you do have to pace yourself.
Well, but to speak to what he said, if he wants to do that, that's fine. Let him. I don't have a problem with him doing that, but
know your own boundaries.
To defend myself. You can still do good things if you get to choose how much you want to put in. But anyway, let's jump down to some of the wrap up questions here, because there's still about maybe 7, 8, 10 here that I want to ask. And speaking now over your entire life, not just about any particular section and not just horror, but if you were to pick one favorite movie, what would you say it would be? And what movie have you watched more times than any other? And it could be two separate movies for these two questions or same. What do you think?
This is a tough one. First one that comes to mind.
Days of Confused. 100%.
Okay. For both?
Yep. I'll watch it all the time. Again, much like Scream, it's just, it's a main line to nostalgia for me and it's a feeling that can't be replicated with any other movie.
So given that, does that just like horribly skew your view when watching films like Oculus? Like you're just like, God damn it, I can't see you as any other character.
Yes. Slater, let's go get high, man. I couldn't believe that was Slater, to be honest with you. I only noticed that on like third watch, and that was
every movie I see him in. I'm just like, you're fucking Slater. Where's the hat?
Right? Yeah. No, I love Days of Confused. I mean, I know a lot of people probably say this about that movie, but it really does depict just kind of a day in the life in high school. And growing up in high school, I had a lot of fun in high school.
Is it nostalgic because it references a more innocent time in your life? Like what makes it nostalgic to you? So
if you look at that movie, I mean, it's last day of school. Everybody remembers the last day of school. The energy, and everybody's just fucking, throwing away their books and everybody's signing each other's yearbooks. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I look back and those were great times for me. High school was very easy because it was a very social place. Like there's just a lot going on. Later on in life, you have to reach out to people a lot. Keeping in touch is a lot harder. And Days and Confused it just reminded me of a day in the life, and
simpler times.
And there's a line at the end where, oh man, like I'm getting goosebumps even thinking about it. But when McConaughey is just like, going up to get those fucking Aerosmith tickets, and he's just like, getting my second wind or whatever he says, and it's just those endless party nights with your friends, and that's what life's all about to me is those good times and having those experiences. I'll always have them in my head and look fondly on them. So yeah, it was like it's a direct main line into kind of what it was like growing up. but it's just watching that movie so much fun too. Like I can quote that whole fucking movie.
Not speaking so much to the words that you've been saying, but more to, I guess, the emotion that I'm getting from them. It almost sounds like, if we were talking about all the other stuff in this call being, 0 to 100 or one end or the other, it almost sounds like after a day of being at 0 or 100, this movie is almost like your come down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Yep. I would definitely agree with that.
Do you see any common threads about what kinds of horror you like? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical, monsters?
I'd say slashers. Does that count?
Slashers. Yeah.
Slashers is kind of my thing, man. I mean, when you get into the psychological stuff, it's hard for me to say like that genre because there are certain movies within that genre, but as a whole,
No, I could see that. I mean, like if I were to give a summary at this point, I would say, 0 to 100 and extremes have come up quite a bit. And I could see how slashers kind of fits into that as well.
Right. And if you want to talk 0 to 100, I'm probably like a 20 on this podcast. I can go higher. I go to 11. This one goes to 11. But no, I'm actually quite subdued right now.
Relatively speaking.
Right, exactly.
Any idea why it is that you like that? The extremes.
Extreme. Well, again, I try and put emphasis on things that truly matter to me. And that may not matter to other people, but the more emphasis that I put into and I double down on the things that I truly believe in, I do feel like it pays off and it makes my life better for doing those things. Conviction. You got to have some conviction. And having conviction in certain areas of my life has kind of made up for who I am. And again, they've all led to good things. It's never bad stuff, a lot of bad shit happens in life. And I feel like the stronger I am with those things, then I'm more apt to kind of deal with them in a way where it won't be, destructive to myself or anybody else or,
Do you think that doubling down has never paid off in the negative for you, or do you just think you've been lucky in those terms?
Oh, I've been wrong a bunch of times. Like I'll swing and miss, but I constantly adjust. Like if I try something and it goes horribly wrong, like, okay, won't do that again. I'm a quick fucking learner, I just don't do that again. And again, just double down on what you know. I think life is constantly making adjustments, take this one down to 60, move this one up.
Okay. So doubling down on what you know is a good qualifier. Cause that's what I was thinking is, I'm imagining someone hearing this and going, okay, I'll double down on everything. And then they end up dead. It's there could be a bad payoff on doing that.
It depends on what we're talking about specifically. We could talk about 10 different things and I could probably give you a different answer on all of them. But I do think the common thread is mainly what I'm talking about is just hard work. I see a lot of people, starting YouTube channels and they wonder why their fucking YouTube channels don't pop off right away and stuff like that. And they don't put in work and it's all been good for me. It's all decision making is obviously at times I'm wrong a lot. But again, I can read the room pretty well and I often adjust and I try and do as much good as possible. But with the full throttle thing and 0 to 100, mainly what I mean is just go hard on what you're good at. And for me, it's never really been a bad thing, ever.
So why horror? Because couldn't you find that same kind of thing in action movies or sports or I'm trying to think of what else, but
yeah,
I would say that there are other genres that definitely incorporate that 0 to 100 thing.
Well, I'm from New England. That's a perfect example. Sports too, like Celtics in the finals. Like, come on.
Okay, let me rephrase that. Let me rephrase the question.
Oh, yeah.
Do you? Okay, so it sounds like maybe you're already answering the question for me. I was going to say, do you also then feel the same way about other genres?
100%.
Or okay, so it's not just horror for you; it's full throttle in other areas too.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, with sports, with again, I'm so passionate about Dawson's Creek. Like, ask me any question about Dawson's Creek. Like, I'm so excited to answer. Like, we talked to people that we were going to start a podcast with this dude, Craig, who's, you actually probably know him. Great dude, but he worked on Dawson's Creek. And, like, we'll sit there and talk for hours on it. And I'll be so passionate about it. And I just love it. And that has nothing to do with horror. Oh, I guess Kevin Williamson, but yeah.
Okay. So it's maybe for you not so much about horror as much as that horror is another avenue for you to maybe get the rush, so to speak.
I'd say horror is my number one. Like Dawson's Creek is like my side bitch, like Tom Brady and all that. No, yeah, like anything. Okay, so I'm trying to think. Like this year, right? I am super fucking excited for Hocus Pocus, for Wednesday to come out, for even fucking the Munsters. Like, I don't care.
So if horror is your number one, then I the natural question there is, then why is it your number one? I mean, I think I could probably already figure it out, but I'll ask anyway, just for the purpose of it. Why would you say horror is your number one?
Darkness. No, I'm just kidding.
Black midnight evil motherfuckers.
Really, it's just, I don't know. I wish I had like a clean cut answer for that, but okay. I love it so much. And it just, maybe it just provides a fake reality to where fucked up shit can't happen and there are no consequences, as opposed to some of the stuff that I talked about in my real life, to where I want no part of that whatsoever.
Well, I think, for example, if you're into the adrenaline of it, even from a fantasy aspect, there's a difference between the fantasy of the risk of death versus the fantasy of winning touchdown. Right. There's even in the fantasy aspect, there's a different amount or a different flavor, if you will, of the adrenaline rush between those two different kinds of things. So that's what I was saying. I could kind of figure it out myself, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak on it yourself.
Yeah.
Really last question, I guess, then is there anything that you've thought of during this call or that might be relevant that we haven't discussed, like something that hasn't come up?
Yes, there is.
What?
I honestly, truly, I think you guys are doing something special with this podcast. I like your approach. I like how you're evoking things that are not normally talked about on podcasts. I've been doing podcasts for a lot of years, and often it's like, hey, let's talk about this movie, as we're going to do on Cut to the Chase after this. But like, let's talk about this movie, and it's very atypical. And while these subjects may come up, it's never like, it's kind of like
the focus.
Right, yeah, it's never the focus. And you guys are making it a focus. And I do think that what you guys are doing is important. And I just want to say that I really appreciate that. And I see you guys.
Appreciate that.
Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely.
Before we wrap up, moment to pitch or push whatever you want to talk about. I know you mentioned Cut to the Chase. Anything else you're working on besides that or in addition?
Yeah, man. So one of the first podcasts I ever kind of got into was with a couple hosts, Vincent Paul and Michael J, and they did Rabbit in Red Radio on horrorbit.com. Horrorbit is no longer, but Rabbit in Red lives, and in a full circle kind of way, Lacey Lou and I both now host that show. So that's a live show pretty much every Wednesday. We shoot for every Wednesday that we do on YouTube, Facebook, where it's a lot of fun. My buddy Michael J, super producer Michael J, man, this is the dude that I started with back in 2012 in the whole podcasting game, and he is just living his best life because now he's a super producer. He's putting in clips our entire show. It's just a lot of fun. It's interactive. You can jump in the chats for that one. So Rabbit in Red Radio on top of our normal show, Cut to the Chase, which will be kicking off our new season of Thrills and Chills, where we cover horror movies. We do a lot of the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. You both are definitely welcome to come on. I'd love for you guys to come on and have some fun on some of those episodes.
Sure.
I also do a show called Cut to the Cartoon Commentary, where we just basically do exactly what I just said, talk over, episodes of Beavis and Butthead or Simpsons or whatever, We have a lot of fun with that. And then Lacey Lou has another slew of shows that are under the Cut to the Chase banner, so I urge everyone to check those out as well. And that's where it's at.
Cool. Yeah, I've intentionally been withholding on checking out Cut to the Chase because I like to come into these interviews with a blank slate, and especially knowing that you recently interviewed Rodrigo, and I want to keep a blank slate for that one too. I've been holding off, but I saw you guys recently posted something about Orphan, which I saw not too long ago, so I'm looking forward to checking that out.
Oh man, Orphan was fucking fantastic. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
All right. So without having met me previously, what are your thoughts on me? Just like if you were to describe me in 2 sentences without using the term obnoxious.
All right, I'll go first.
Damn it.
Because I've got that one.
Sure. Go, Chris, go ahead.
Down to have a beer with you sometime. It would last hours. Those are my 2 sentences.
The beer would not get touched because you guys
I
both
know,
be talking
right? Like
too
it
much.
would just sit there the whole time.
Well, having talked to you now, obviously, Full Throttle would have to be in the sentence somewhere. Probably Down to Earth would be in there as well.
Yeah, there's a good bipolar description. Down to earth, full throttle.
I like it.
Well, you can't go full throttle without having friction, so
Right.
Otherwise the tire just spins. You don't go anywhere.
Okay. Thank you for mentioning the tire. I was gonna be like, is that a sex joke?
Oh God.
You said friction. I'm perpetually 13. I'm sorry.
Yeah, those are the first 2 things because when we were talking about like some of the real shit that's happened in your life, obviously, that there's some real shit. So that's where the down to earth part of it came from. And I mean, it's good to have, I don't want to say it's good to have that, but it's good to have a balance between, like we said earlier, knowing about, what's fantasy and what's reality. That is a very big, important thing that a lot of people struggle with, not even just who are horror fans, but, people who go through life. And
Right.
I've known people who are into role play that don't know how to turn off.
Right.
Like it's, you gotta know when to turn off.
Right.
I guess kind of goes back to what I said earlier about, always being raised to be, this go-getter and always 110%. And then learning at some point in my adult life to go, I need to know how to turn that off.
Right.
And back off a little bit.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you guys for having me. You guys are awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you to anybody out there listening. Please do come visit us at horrormakesushappy.com. We got a list of people there we'd like to interview. I'll just cut it short and say, if you like what we're doing, let somebody know, because we're still in growth mode. So help us out.